up. And often it starts with, well, I know this is impossible, but, and
Mhm.
then often my answer is actually, I've seen that before.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I am so excited to meet someone I have been wanting to meet for so long. I love following her. I love her energy, and I love what she is doing to help physicians find workplaces that really represent their values and are in alignment with a place that they can be happy. So we have in front of us today Dr. Lara Hochman. She is the founder of Happy Day Health, which helps to, she's the, I call it the medical matchmaker. Is that probably right?
That's
Which
correct.
it connects physicians with practices that really are places where they can thrive rather than oftentimes we find ourselves in situations where we're just trying to survive. So excited to bring you on the channel today. And can you please share with the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I think, what you do is so important, and bringing that authenticity is so big, because I feel like a lot of us feel like we're on an island and we're the only one experiencing what we're experiencing, or, we don't know where to turn for help. And knowing that other people are going through something similar to us is so huge and so important. A little bit about me. Goodness, let's see. So I'm a family medicine physician. I still practice. I do locum tenens, and I'm a mom. I have two kids. I would say that's probably my hardest job.
Mm.
And I have my company, Happy to Health, where I'm really trying to make a big impact in how we practice medicine. I think the more of us that are in private practice or not owned by the large corporate systems, the more voice we have and the more ability we have to affect change, as far as all of these crazy metrics that we have to jump through, or press Gainey scores, or
Mm.
insurance, everything. And so, I really am trying to help increase the amount of doctors in private practice and give us a voice, and show those of us in medicine that don't know yet how much fun medicine can be and how much we can really enjoy it.
And you have a YouTube channel which I just discovered and love, and we're talking kind of about what fears physicians might have when they're considering switching from a hospital-based system to private practice model. Can you explain a little bit more about what your thoughts were on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I see. So, probably the biggest barrier that I see in making the switch is salary. So, not always, but very often the private practices aren't able to charge what the hospital systems are. And a large part of this is because hospitals are very comfortable losing money on their practices, because they know that they're going to make that up and more with all the tests that we order, and the images and labs and referrals and hospital admissions. So a lot of times they're okay losing money on salary because they know that they'll make it up. Whereas the private practices don't necessarily have that and need to innovate. So probably the biggest barrier that I see is in the salaries, and not realizing that if we go from one big, you know, abusive system to another abusive system, we're going to be just as miserable. And sometimes it's worth the cost, the financial cost. If someone said to you, I will pay you $100,000 a year to be miserable. That's it. Your only job is you have to be
Yeah.
miserable. Would you do it? Because I know I wouldn't. So, that's kind of how I see, and it's not always $100,000. I pulled that number out of my head, but that's kind of the way I see it. The other fears in going from hospital employed position to private practices is stability. So,
Mm.
we as physicians perceive the stability of a hospital system to be better, because the hospitals are there forever and we feel like we're going to have a stable job, which sometimes is the case. I mean, there's doctors who've been in hospitals forever. The hospitals aren't going anywhere. But within that system, we're seeing doctors who are being double, triple booked. We're burning out. We're asking for, to go part time, and that's being declined. We're being told we can take absolutely no vacations at all whatsoever, because, maybe we're the only one in that specialty. And if we go on vacation, there's no one to cover. We're being replaced by practitioners with less training than us. We're being told to do things we don't necessarily want to do. So long as you do what you're told, yes, your job is pretty stable. Versus a private practice, it's perceived to be less stable, when I don't necessarily think that's the case. And especially after COVID, the practices that have survived COVID, they're not going anywhere. If they could survive that, which was, financially very stressful for a practice, they're doing just fine. And there are some practices that actually didn't just survive the pandemic, they thrived.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. So, if people that don't know my background that well, I went from a surgical specialty, high paying specialty, to the lowest paid specialty. It equates to preventative medicine, like more. I hear palliative care doesn't get paid very well, but you find value in what you do. And I'm more palliative care model. And I am currently a research fellow, and I left oral maxillofacial surgery because I developed severe burnout and suicidal ideation as a resident. And interestingly enough, that completely shaped a lot of my mindset around valuing your time. I lost my ex boyfriend during that period of time in co resident and people close to me at a very young age. And so when I hear physicians talking about salary and what they're giving up in order to reach these numbers, I don't ever hear the limit at which they are okay. Where they're like, okay, because it's that comparisonitis type of thing. And like, well, I could keep getting better. I'm like, but how much do you truly need and what lifestyle is actually best? Because I learned for me, I love to own barely anything at all. And I'm lucky because I'm like, I actually learned I love to own less. And now I'm a research fellow and I have flexibility and autonomy. And when I heard the word autonomy and a lot of the things you said, that really resonated. And when we think about that hospital based system compared to the private practice, we talked about why the fallacies or the beliefs that people have about the hospital system. Can you share what you're seeing when people do transition and take a chance on private practice?
Yeah, it's very striking. I think we don't realize how different it is until you see it with your own eyes. The conversation that I feel like I could just hit record and replay is physicians in private practice will say to me things like, yes, I earn less, but I am so much happier. I have autonomy. I have flexibility. I don't have someone telling me what I need to do. I would never go back to that system ever again. Why are people not flocking to the system?
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't have an answer. And I think a big part of it is, it's America. America is very, so I didn't just, as a preface, I didn't grow up in the US. And I also hate having things. Like, all of
Mm-hmm.
my kids' toys drive me up the wall because they're things and they stress me out. So, I think you and I are fortunate in that way because we can be
Yes.
more financially frugal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not, it's not hard. I don't need things. That's fine. Yeah. So private practices, this is a conversation I have all the time where the private practices tell me how much happy they are doing that, and that they would give up the higher salary every day. I mean, like, I have one physician I spoke to who earns very low salary. I mean, still happier. Like, it's not comparable. And the physicians that are looking for positions, I often get told, no, I'm not interested. And I have access to hospital employed positions for them, but that's not my heart and soul. That's not where I feel like, those aren't going to be my clients. Those are going to be other people's clients that I happen to have access to. But when I speak with physicians who are asking for salary, the entire conversation, I'm like, what questions do you have about the practice? It's all salary, PTO,
Mm-hmm.
benefits, which is all important. But, then I'll say, and you get a scribe and you get to be a part of the decision making in the practice. And that's not, I mean, they're just not interested. And I think a part of it is they just don't know, they haven't seen it yet. They don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, and I recognize that too from a few groups I was in online. I had to remove myself from because a lot of it was scarcity model, very salary heavy. And I knew I've come in, I was in residency, I mean, long, then was an attending. And during COVID, I was a hospital based dentistry attending and I took 50% pay cut. And I made less than a resident salary last year. And then I met with a financial advisor and I'm not doing bad because, as we mentioned, my savings rate was so high that I don't need a whole bunch of money. And the stress level is knowing that I don't need a lot to survive. And then also thinking, I can't compare, you have children and I don't. But if we just factor in the reality of how much do they truly need, and especially if you raise them the way that they don't need a whole lot of things in order to be happy, then I think that can help reduce the amount of expenditure. And then you don't need to put such a high priority on salary. So I think, it's such a great conversation, especially if they're thinking about who are they surrounding themselves with and what kind of influence are they gathering from those crowds that they're around.
That's such a good point. We strive to be like the people we're around. It's keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And so, when we make friends, we have our priorities. And, for me, priorities are, who has the good value system and who, you know, enjoys being with their kids. Or, I don't want to get together with friends and talk about our cars or our houses. Or, I mean, sure, if I get a new car, I'm going to be very excited about my new car. But I drive a Honda
Yeah.
and I'm going to drive it until it no longer drives anymore. And goodness, I love my Honda. Like, I love my minivan. I drive a mom car and I
I
love
love that
it.
too.
So,
Yeah, I have a Nissan Juke and it's white on the outside and red on the inside, and it feels like I'm in a race car, and it's very much fits my personality because it's very conservative on the outside but yet a little bit eccentric on the inside. Like it's a 2014, so I'm like, I hope nothing happens to it. And now I moved to Houston, and I'm like, I protect it because I moved so much, and so it's like it's been there for me through a lot of things.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So if I were to come in and I was a physician working in the hospital-based system and I was feeling that urge of something, there must be something better out there. And I reach out to you, what would that conversation look like? And what kind of things do you help people navigate?
It's very different for every person. So I like to start out hearing about what they like about where they are now, what they don't like about what they are where they are now, and if you could dream up your imaginary scenario, what would it look like? And that's probably my favorite part is hearing people dream things up, and often it starts with, well, I know this is impossible, but, and
Mhm.
then often my answer is, actually, I've seen that before, or you just have to do it in this way or whatever. So I enjoy having these, like, let's see how we can make these things work. I spoke with someone who was interested in teaching and was interested in having her own direct primary care practice and was interested in the underserved. And she's like, and I don't know which one to pick. And I was like, well, why do you have to pick? Why not just do them all? And so, I was able to show her, you can do direct primary care where you make money, and then you charge enough, of the membership fee to be able to give some for free to some people, and then you host residents. Like, there you go, put them all
Yeah.
together. So
Wow.
I enjoy that sort of conversation, but a lot of it depends on what people tell me they're interested in, or a lot of people don't realize what's out there or don't realize what's possible. And so I enjoy having those conversations. And the best is when they're like, I'm not in a hurry to find something, but if the perfect thing comes up, please call me. And then I'm like, yes. And then I can lie in wait and then just,
Yes. That I highly recommend people, if they're not feeling that they're in that dream job or they're in that mediocre middle, to look early, because I waited and I put my head down for so long. And when you're in that moment of desperation, you can't really sit and think through, like, what are my wildest dreams? You're like on survival mode. And it's funny that the way that you're saying things, some of the tools I have from Martha Beck's Wayfinder Life Coach program, they're your ideal day. Like, what would your ideal day look like? And a lot of the times people come to me and they're like, I know this is probably not possible, or I'm embarrassed to admit that I want to spend more time with my children.
Yeah.
And then another tool is the wildly improbable goals, which is what you said. It's like, it seems slightly out of reach, but realistic enough. And you can take those turtle steps to kind of tweak your life in order to get to those goals. And then one day you might have exactly what you laid out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know what I was doing was like a thing.
It
Yeah,
is
that's
a
that's
thing.
very cool.
Yes, it's a thing with Martha Beck. And it's interesting too, because she says, it's not every dream that we can accomplish, like that whole, if you dream it, you can achieve it. Not always, but if you don't dream it, you certainly won't achieve it. Like that's and it,
100% true.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you are balancing so many things. How do you kind of compartmentalize, or how do you balance your life?
It's a work in progress. So in medicine, I had it figured out. I had balance figured out. It took me about 8 or 9 years to figure out how to find that work life balance, and I found it. Um, and then I started this company, Happy to Help, and I had to find it all over again. Now, I'm a physician, so of course I'm extremely type A, and for the first 9 months of doing this job, I was my worst boss I have ever had.
How do you
I
qualify that?
I never stopped working. I would wake up
Mm,
in the morning before my kids woke up, and I
yes.
would do a little bit, and then they'd wake up. I'd get them ready, take them to school, or I didn't even take them to school because I was so stressed out. My husband took them to school, then I would work, and then um, get them ready for bed, and then work. I mean, it was just stupid. And here I am telling people, find your balance,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I have no balance at all, and it's all my doing. Like my business is mine. I don't have to do that to myself. What am I doing? So and it obviously comes from a good place. I'm trying to help people. I think realizing that is always the first step, and then it took me a couple of months to figure out what the heck to do with that. And so I'm better at when I'm off, I'm off. I can turn my brain off a lot easier now. Also, my systems are getting better, which is certainly helpful. But I'm better at scheduling time to do my own thing. I'm better at actually not working on emails on weekends. I'm just better at turning off. And I think a part of it is some mindset work of, like, it's okay. It's okay to just stop at 5 p.m. or it's okay to stop at 3 p.m. sometimes and takes my kids out for ice cream. Um, so I'm certainly far from perfect as far as balance goes because I'm learning it all over again in a whole new entrepreneurial world. And I get so excited about what I do. So, if I the other night during dinner, I found out that I placed a physician in the most amazing practice you have ever
Oh,
seen. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, guys, I got it. And I was like so excited. So that was the end of dinner for me. And I ran and I called the practice and I called the canon. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is going to be so awesome. So, balance there out the window. But
I love this
it was for
though.
a good reason. So.
Yes, this enthusiasm. If I mean, just watching just the amount you have that passion for the why, and then that celebration. Like what we talked about, what's missing in medicine right now is celebrating each other's successes. And that's the special sauce. Is I have I'm doing a challenge for prevention of veteran suicide, and somebody asked me to collaborate, and they gave me their story about their why. I'm like, boom! Of course, I'm going to collaborate with that person because their passion is there. Versus another tech company that tells me their technology, but their passion's not there. I'm like, I just fizzled out because you're there for the wrong reasons, or you're there because your technology's cool. And I certainly love the amount of emotion, and we hear this often, right? With entrepreneur, it happens to me. I batched like a million blogs, and then I like stopped, and then I do this, and then stop, and then you find your balance. I'm like, oh gosh. But there was a reel, and it was talking about like, I'm so glad that I got out of my 9 to 5 so I can work 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure so many people can relate to that right now.
Yeah.
And for people that are interested in entrepreneurial, like how did it look when you were kind of at that point before you started your company? I'm sure people are experiencing similar thoughts and concerns that you had.
Before I started, this company was many years in the making. First, I'm not one of those people who is an entrepreneur at heart. I'm not one of those people who has always dreamed about starting a company or running a company or being a CEO. In fact, I actually ran in the complete other direction.
Mhm.
Um, but when I saw what was happening in medicine, and I read a hospital contract. Actually, that's where it all started. Um, I just knew that I had to do something and be a part of the solution. And I starting a company was the last thing on my list. It was like not my thing. Um, but it just kind of naturally evolved, and when I started it, it just wasn't even a question. I think I have a vision for what not just my company can do, but the downstream effects. There's that ripple effect that it can have. And I'm starting to see that where, like when you and I spoke, I'm like, gosh, I'm so excited to speak to
Yes, me
the
too.
Jillian Reichert. And you said, no, I'm so excited to speak to the Lara Hochman. So, it's cool. I think that, I'm able to get my message out to doctors not to settle for abusive contracts or not to settle for money over lifestyle or there's so many things. So before I started, I think it was a little bit of I need to help doctors find places where they can be happier. And then as I started doing, I realized, and then the more of us that do that, the more we can realize that right now it's the hospital. The practices are having a hard time keeping up with the hospital systems. They're having a hard time attracting physicians. And I realized at some point that's going to flip because, once doctors realize how much better private practice is, and not always, of course, I mean, there's exceptions to every rule. It's going to become more a matter of the hospitals have a hard time recruiting physicians because they all want to be in private practice
Yep.
because they know how much better the lifestyle is and how much better it is to work for someone who understands what you're going through. And then, I mean, it just keeps evolving. Like, where I see this going, I'm like, oh, this is going to be huge one day.
Yes.
So, no matter how big my company gets, but I'm most excited about the ripple effects of what will happen.
And what speaks to me is, one, again, how many people we always hear that are entrepreneurs out there, like, I'm so introverted, this is so outside, but I just needed to be the voice of change. And then I think it's Chelsea Turgeon. I think that's her name, Dr. Chelsea Turgeon. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. But she wrote a Kevin MD article about toxic workplaces, which really resonated with me in that learned helplessness. And I'm seeing that in a lot of the negative culture that we have in the medical groups on Facebook and this lack of support. It's like, I feel like people are beaten down. And the more voices we can have, like yours, are like, wait, things do not have to be this way. Let me show you the way, and you kind of pluck out one person at a time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then that one person can spread the word to their friends, and their friends then spread it to their friends. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you spread it, I know everyone from the people that are spreading it, there's going to be the naysayers and the people that don't believe it can happen for them. And we just say, take a chance on you.
Exactly. Exactly. And hopefully people even who are not your or my audience who maybe don't agree with us on certain things are watching this and say, "Oh, well, maybe. Yeah, maybe."
Yeah, possibly. Be that Martha Beck, right? You can dream it. It may not happen, but if you don't dream it, it certainly won't happen.
Yeah, completely.
And we're going to make sure to put all of your contacts below. Is there any last lessons or last thoughts that you have that you'd like to leave with the audience?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. I don't know what to
Oh,
leave you with.
so many.
So
We can share them all. We can share them all.
I'll keep to one. I think the big thing is if you're unhappy or you're burned out, like you say, don't wait until the last minute. I'm always available for a phone call, whether it's to find a new job or just talk to someone. Like seriously, just reach out on my website, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best place to get hold of me.
Mhm.
Yeah, please do reach out. I mean, there's always something better. Always. Things always get better. I think, this is something that I preach to my kids. Like, if things seem awful, they will get better. And notice your signs. For me, when I don't sleep, I know that's my
Yeah,
sign that I need to change something.
yeah.
And sometimes it takes it a while to realize that, but notice what it is in yourself that's telling you that you're unhappy and make a change, or even just take a break, which will then give you the energy to make that change.
It's such great advice because my red flag, if I know that you guys have an addiction company, the selfrecovery.org. I was thinking in terms of like picking up with substances, or for me, it was an eating disorder behavior. The lack of sleep really drove me to having suicidal thoughts. And exactly what you said, extracting yourself and taking a pause and resting and resetting, like that is often the next best step in order to be back in that mindset where you can think straight. So if we're trying to think clearly in a place of desperation, like just prioritize rest, the importance of just rest, recovery, nourishment, and then dream and redevelop, right? Have a rebirth.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I know since we have so many things we could talk about, I'd love to have you keep coming on again. And of
Thanks. I'd
course,
love to.
Yeah, of course, I need to point people to follow you because I've just enjoyed all of your messages. So that's a great place for them to start if they say, hey, maybe I'm not ready to dive right in, and then just baby step it up and get exposure and start dreaming.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks so much for being here. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to comment below and check out Dr. Hochman and create the life you deserve. Appreciate you being here.